Well, hi and good afternoon. This is Carl Munson of Good Morning Portugal. We've got a special live stream this afternoon. It's 7 o'clock here in Portugal, and it's been quite the day for wildfires. A lot of them are spread over the central and northern part of the country. And we've got Mike Barton, who's going to be joining us in just a moment. He's a firefighter from Chicago, recently settled in central Portugal in Miranda de Corvo, and he's got a number of angles or insights on this, given that he can see the smoke coming down from where it's mainly concentrated. It would appear to be in Aveiro, and that area at the moment, the Aveiro district. I think that's blowing towards the central part of Portugal where Mike is, and of course his experience as a firefighter. Oh, thank you for joining us. I think a bit flustered, quite frankly, this afternoon. It's been quite the day of fires here in Portugal, central and northern Portugal, and we've got special guest Mike Barton joining us in just a moment, who's recently arrived in Miranda de Corvo in central Portugal. He is an experienced firefighter of many years in Chicago, so he'll have a couple of angles to comment upon in. Actually, he's a paramedic, isn't he? But we'll find out from Mike exactly what his professional insight is on this from two angles: as a new inhabitant here in Portugal, and from his work in the emergency services as well. So let's bring him onto the screen right now. And if you have got any photographs, video, or more importantly, if you've got any questions or needs for help, if you want to check in safely, if you want to make sure others are safe, if you want to reach out and use this as a meeting point, a virtual meeting point this evening to make sure people are safe and to find out what to do and to be prepared, please feel free to do so. So let's bring Mike onto the screen now. Mike, good evening to you.
Good evening. How you doing?
I'm well. A little bit shocked about what's gone on. I mean, to see some of the images that have been on Portuguese TV this afternoon are pretty horrifying, aren't they, in the Aveiro district? How are you? How have you seen it? How have you responded to the situation?
Right now, we're just in a monitoring phase. There's a pretty big fire just north of Coimbra, right off of the A13.
Right.
And unfortunately, the wind right now, the last time I checked a few minutes ago, is blowing from the north to south. So that's blowing the flames and smoke basically due south. The big viral fire, the winds were initially blowing from the northeast, so kind of going from the northeast to the southwest. And I think if you look on the Fragos.pt app, you'll kind of see almost a line of fires that I think because of the smoke and all the ash, you're getting small spot fires that are being spread because of the wind. And unfortunately, probably because of lack of resources and the dry and windy conditions, those small fires are becoming big very quickly.
They really have got their hands full, haven't they, the bombeiros here in Portugal? And that's what they're known as. If you're looking from outside of the country, the firefighters here, the largely volunteer firefighting forces, the bombeiros, and they tend to have a headquarters or a station in the larger towns, and they all support each other, and they'll be making their way across the country, I'm sure, from the east and the south to help their colleagues in central and the northwest, which, as you can see, Mike, from the image on the screen here, that's where the concentration is. That's what you've been talking about, right? That northwestern line there, really. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see that pattern there. And I think this line more to the east is probably higher ground, isn't it? Where the wind is catching, where the fire is being assisted by the breeze, I guess, at the top of the hills there.
Correct. We call that a wind-driven fire.
Right.
A little bit of my background. I am both a firefighter and paramedic from Chicago.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
I'm retired. I'm a retired fire investigator, but I also retired as a shift commander, so I was more in the command role.
Wow.
Obviously, in Chicago, we did a lot more structural firefighting. This is wildland firefighting, which is a whole separate specialty in its own.
Yeah.
Kudos to those guys that do it because it's a whole different style of firefighting. But yes, the wind-driven fires, what the problem is, because it starts off as a small fire. If you've been watching some of the video on the news, you'll see them trying to put out a fire, and all of a sudden the trees around the people trying, and most of them are civilians, or the GNR, because the firefighters are just overwhelmed, and all of a sudden you see a couple trees explode in flames. That's from what we call the wind-driven fire.
Okay, it's absolutely horrifying when you see that. The people just outside their houses or on their land in their quintas struggling with this, of course, until the bombeiros can get there. And as I think you mentioned earlier on, I mean, they're going to be really stretched, aren't they? These are volunteers. They have some professional colleagues. The force is driven by professionals, of course, and a strategic command. But they will be they will be thin on the ground, won't they? And they'll have to go to where the most I guess where it's the most dangerous at any given time, and spread their resources as they see fit. So you'll know something about the strategic view of this, then, Mike. What do you
Yes.
think will be going on here in Portugal? How will they be coordinating this, do you think?
Well, like you said, my next door neighbor is a full-time firefighter here in Miranda de Corporal. He's one of the career firefighters. And just ironically, a week or two ago, Kat and I went over and did a tour of the station, just being a firefighter.
Really? Yeah.
They have a very well-coordinated, what we would call a mutual aid system in the United States. As you pointed out, they're calling in firefighters from the Algarve, from Lisbon, from all over. With the type of explosive environment that we're seeing today and the amount of fires, this would probably very quickly turn into an international response where you're going to start getting firefighters from Spain and other parts of Europe. They'll be getting tankers. I just saw something on the news right before we started that unfortunately, because of the smoke, a few of the helicopters can no longer operate. It's too dangerous. So
Right.
that water drop which is really going to help, they can no longer do it because the smoke is too thick. So now you need to start getting aircrafts, and even the aircrafts are limited in these conditions and how well they can operate and how efficient they are or effective they are.
Right. And these will be colleagues in the first instance, I'm guessing, from Spain, because we had terrible fires 7 years ago, didn't we, in Pedrogo Grande, which is still fresh in the memory of the Portuguese people. It's a truly tragic situation. And that will be part of the driving force and why they are so well equipped now and are calling upon colleagues across the whole Iberian Peninsula. Do you think they'll be coming in from further afield as well, then, maybe France and even other parts of the world?
It's very possible. I know in speaking to my neighbor when I was at the station, they actually sent over one of their incident commanders to Canada when Canada had those really severe wildland fires last summer.
Right.
So it's not uncommon for resources from all over the world to come and help, assist either with command functions, boots on the ground, aircraft. So if this continues to, burn out of control as it is, it would be very likely that they would be, requesting assets from outside of the Iberian Peninsula.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, so so that people can get to the basics of this. What you need to look out for. Well, I mean, tell me if you agree with this. My advice to people is to be aware of what's going on, and then to be prepared in equal measure. So the first resource, and a very good resource it is too, is fogos.pt is what we're looking at, and that's under my name there, although it's a bit small at the moment. So I'll put that as a larger headline, if you like, to read on the screen. It's not a complicated www at all. It's www.fogos.pt, and that's what you'll see when you get to the site. And you can use this as web-based, and you can also download it as an app for your phone as well. And that's giving us a real-time view of what's going on. And this was among the largest, I think, in the Aveiro district. This area here is the real problem at the moment. And this is where we're seeing terrible images on the TV. And so, for example, you'll see there, as I click on it, you've got 568 firefighters, 195 vehicles, and 3 aircraft in support there. And you think, Mike, that the wind conditions are too dangerous for sending some of the aircraft, or certainly the helicopters, up into the air?
Yes. The smoke plays havoc on the propellers or the rotor blades of the helicopters. And same thing with the firefighting aircraft, and they don't usually operate at night. So with the sun going down, those unfortunate air resources are going to decrease as it gets dark. And if the smoke is as thick as it has been, that will limit their ability to get in there and really hit the hot spots where they need to drop the water. And like I said, I've already seen on the news where in one of the fires they had to cease helicopter operations because the smoke was too thick.
Which must be just an awful feeling for the firefighters, but it has to be safety first, because they don't want more loss of life from occurring from that side of things, do they?
Correct. And as we point out this morning, I know there was already one firefighter that died yesterday. It sounded more like a medical. Unfortunately, I did see that there was a female firefighter that sustained severe burns today already. And they've reported some civilians getting burned. This is the type of fires you do not want to put out yourself. Unfortunately, I see more and more images on the TV of people running with buckets of water or like the garden hose. That amount of water is not going to do any good. and people don't realize how hot these fires are. And if you don't wear the right protective gear, you will get burned very quickly. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more and more civilians getting injured who are trying to fight these fires when they should try to protect themselves and evacuate.
All right. So we started to talk about how people might be prepared. There are people who have come to Portugal quite recently. If they've come from California, other parts of the United States, Australia, for example, they'll be used to some extent to wildfires and they'll have grown up in that sort of culture. But others have come to Portugal like we did. We had no idea. We were terrified when we saw this happening. We didn't know how to prepare for it. So let's help those sort of people who've come, who don't understand what's going on and how to prepare. They didn't grow up in this culture. So this, first and foremost, is to find out what's going on when you live, where you live, and you can do that with this app and web-based service here, Fogos.pt. What else can people do, Mike? It's good to have a grab bag by the door, isn't it, and a plan?
Yes, we called it, a bug out bag, a go bag. You want to have something that you have like a day or two worth of clothing, your important medications, some money, obviously your important documents if you don't have a fire safe. But even fire safes are limited in the amount of time that they can protect documents in a fire. Like I said, in my previous life, working as a fire investigator, we go and retrieve documents from people and structures that had severe fires. And unfortunately, a lot of times those documents were not protected from the water and the heat. It's a very short period. So get your passports, get your resident card, any important documents, birth certificates, have those in a file that's ready to go that you can grab that stuff and walk out the door. I would always recommend, especially, here in Portugal where, I think we're creatures of habit. I think it's safe to say that if you think about where you live, you go into your house one way and you leave your house one way. It's probably the most common way that you get to and from your house.
Yes.
In situations like this, you need to have your plan A, but also plan B, plan C, plan D. Because like I think I texted you earlier, right now you cannot get north of Coimbra. Every roadway going to Coimbra has been shut down because of these fires. If your plan was to go north through Coimbra up into like Braga, you can't go that way right now. You'd have to go south. You'd have to go, east.
And that's when you need plan B.
Yes, plan B, plan C. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too late right now because of the conditions, but once this is done and over with, I would highly recommend people to have a plan in place, have emergency contacts so you can check in with either your neighbors or your family, just to let them know that you're safe, but also start driving around the area that you live in. So, okay, if this main road's blocked, how would I get out of Miranda do Corvo? If I can't take A13, can I take A17? What's my other options to get out of here quickly and safely, to protect myself?
That's a really good idea. And as you say today, it might be a bit too late to go. Certainly, you shouldn't go out driving and planning an escape route today. I mean, the advice for everyone else who's not directly involved is to stay at home, isn't it, and get out of the way? Because if you go out now and let's say you have a little road traffic accident, like a little knock or something like that, you're going to be calling GNR resources away from where they're really needed in the country at the moment. So it's just best to stay at home and stay out of it, right?
Yeah, we call it protect in place. We've been in some Facebook groups and some people have been asking questions, obviously with the group of people that are involved with Good Morning Portugal, a little bit older. If you have any sort of, respiratory issue, asthma, emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, any type of lung issues, you do not want to be outside. And if you are outside, you're probably leaving your house to going to a safer place. Because that particulate in the smoke is what's the irritant, and that's what's going to cause your eyes to itch. That's what's going to cause some respiratory problems. And if you already have like a weakened respiratory system, it's just going to aggravate it. And again, if you need to call 112 because you're having a hard time breathing, because you went outside, or you want to go driving around, you're taking resources away from the people who really need it right now.
Yes,
and also
you might not think of that, might you? You could understand people being curious, but really now is not the time to go wandering about planning an escape route or even rubbernecking to see what's going on in your neighborhood.
Right, and honestly, I don't like to push the panic button, but seeing how quickly these fires are erupting, and the fire in the Coimbra district, there's two of them. They've kind of erupted. If you do have something you're concerned about, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to wake up and you left the windows open accidentally. I mean, right now you should be closing up your house to keep the smoke from coming in. Yeah. But if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you find yourself short of breath. Again, it's going to be, they can't get you to Coimbra because it's not safe. Yeah. I don't know where the next major medical center would be down towards, in your direction. But that's where, it becomes a bigger issue. I'd almost look at, if you do have some medical conditions that you're worried about and you see the fire slowly advance in your direction, this might be the time to, okay, let's call it. let's, go get a hotel somewhere south of here that's going to have clean air. I don't have to worry about becoming short of breath or using oxygen. And I just rather play it safe. Not that you worry about your house catching on fire, but it's the elements of the fire, burning that's going to cause issues.
Yeah, yeah, you make some really good and sobering points there, because that's how it seems to work, Mike, isn't it? It's like, we have a theoretical idea of what it's going to be like, but then when this becomes a reality, you do realize things you never thought of before until
Yep.
you're put in this sort of situation and this sort of pressure. And yeah, this whole idea of air quality as well. We're finding out from Sir Lion H here, who's up in Braga. In Braga, can't see more than 500 meters in most directions, and lots of smoke in the air. 8 planes coming from Spain, France, and Italy. So they've been mobilized from neighboring countries, which is good to hear for a very sad and difficult occasion, but good to see some cooperation of that kind. Thank you for being here tonight, Thunderduck, and the Global Nobles as well. And if anyone is watching who has any questions, seriously, there aren't any silly questions in a situation like this. Don't be afraid to ask. We've got Mike here, who's from the emergency services in Chicago. He spent time with the firefighting service and as a paramedic. He knows what he's talking about in an emergency. So any questions, we'll do our best to handle those. And if you just want to check in, questions, if you want to share anything, please do. I mean, what you shared, Mike, was really useful information that roads going north out of Coimbra are just shut, are they?
Yeah, going north towards Coimbra and south to Aveiro. One of the Facebook groups I saw, we had clients that flew into, one of the members had clients flying into Porto, and they were on the A1 coming from the airport, and they got stopped. They're stuck in the A1. They'll probably get turned around. So anything north of Aveiro is shut down, and anything north of Coimbra going towards Aveiro is shut down. Amazing. And like I said, they just shut down A13 going into Coimbra because this fire is right off of the A13. It kind of dead ends up in the mountains, and you kind of wind a windy road into Coimbra. You probably take it yourself, but right there, that mountain range is where that fire is. So they've shut down A13, so you can't even get into Coimbra off of the A13. Which again goes to my point that if you need to go to a hospital, which the closest university hospital for us is in Coimbra, now you might be looking if it's something serious or you do have a complex medical condition, you'd be like heading towards Liera maybe, or down by your neck of the woods.
Yeah, and you don't want added stress, do you? If you're in that sort of situation, the last thing you need is some added stress. So make sure you're calm and collected, and you have a plan, which is where we got to really in terms of preparedness. This is part of living life in Portugal, it has to be said. These things do happen. So know where to look in terms of being educated about this. Fogos.pt. Have a plan, as Mike has outlined for you. The grab bag, the go bag, and a couple of alternatives of ways of escaping where you live, your vicinity, and to get to a place of safety. Sarah's here, and we've said to Sarah, we've got a mutual arrangement with the Taylors. If we find ourselves in some difficulty, no need to call, just come over. And it's a reciprocal arrangement. And I imagine a few people are doing that. That's also might be a good idea, Mike, right? You don't want to be ringing round everybody to ask if it's okay. Figure that out first. Make your emergency plan with some friends, perhaps.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about Portugal is I think everyone in this country is here to help everyone. And if you were to knock on your neighbor's door and said, I need some help, I guarantee you 100% that they would do what they could to help you out. Yeah. But yes, have that, that network of friends you can call, family, develop a phone tree so you can check up on each other, especially if you know someone that does have some type of respiratory issue or who's on oxygen on a regular basis. These are the people you really need to be checking up on right now, to make sure that they're safe. And if they need any help, try to do what you can to safely get them the help they need. If that even means, driving them to another friend's house or a family member's house that's in the less, smoky area right now.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a really, really good point that you're making there. And that's, of course, something we can do. Hopefully everybody who's watching this is safe and well. And we might be able to turn our attention towards other people who need help. They might need putting up for the night. They might need moving somewhere, evacuating, as you said. And also the firefighters themselves as well, Mike. What sort of help do you think the Bombeiros will need? Or should we just stay well away from them at the moment?
I keep hearing they're appealing for bottled water, protein bars like you get like at Decathlon, or you can pick up at any of the grocery stores or food stores. Fruit, stuff to they say like personal hygiene, toothbrushes, toothpaste. A lot of times when you go out the door on a response, you don't know that you're going to be there for up here you could be probably gone for 2 or 3 days. they'll
Yes.
rotate crews, they'll give them, time to sleep and stuff, but they didn't bring their, their personal hygiene stuff with them in the engines. So anything like toothbrushes, eye wash, if you have eye wash, like I said, bottled water is huge because of the heat and, it's a smoke. A lot of that bottled water doesn't go in for hydration. It goes into washing out eyes and stuff from all the smoke and stuff. If you've been watching the coverage, you'll see some of the GNR guys kind of backing out from away from the fire, rubbing their eyes, blowing their noses. That's because of all the soot that's getting into their respiratory and their vision. So anything like that, if you contact your local bomberos, station, they will tell you if they need equipment or donations. And even if they're not, like if it's down by the Algarve or by Lisbon, all those donations will eventually work their way up to where it's needed up here. They'll have, caravans of, supplies going to the, the stations that are housing all the firemen.
Okay, but don't take it to the front line, obviously. I mean, maybe it
No.
does go without saying, but just in case anyone is thinking of being helpful and driving it direct to the action, take it to the station,
Take it
not
to the
the
station.
front line. Take it to the
Correct.
station and those sorts of things. And energy bars, did you mention those as well? I've heard they need something quick and easy to eat as well, don't they?
Correct. They need something that's nutritious. They need something that's going to last with them. So energy bars, any type of like fruits, bananas, oranges, something that's, got some nutrition to it. And also has some ability to, give them some hydration too. Because the biggest, not only affecting, the heat, it's the dehydration with the hot days and the hot, dry atmosphere. They can get dehydrated very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Are you all right to stay with us for a bit longer, Mike?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Because and I really appreciate it. You were very quick to reach out and say, if you could be of help. I was thinking, maybe we should do a live stream. You sent your message, so I think here we've got a focal point for the English speakers, the expats, the foreigners. If there are any concerns, any messages you want to relay, if any help is needed, just pop it in the chat. You can call us as well, 913-590-303. The Global Nobles were on a bus from Porto. All the traffic stopped at Ovar, 20 kilometers from Porto, and the bus was turned around after 2.5 hours. So they waited 2.5 hours and they got turned around after that. Anyway, here's a lovely offer. Thank you so much, Sarah. We here in Leiria have a room if someone needs a safe place. That is a lovely offer and one that we can bear in mind for anybody who might need that. Yes, Sarah, it's I can't say it's a pleasure to be doing this. I'm glad we're able to, and that we can connect in this way as well. So you let us know how we can help you. Stay well, everyone. Did you get home yet to the Global Nobles there? So you were turned back. Have you been turned back, and are you able to get home, or are you stranded somewhere where we might be able to help, Global Nobles? And have you got Starbucks with you? I'm guessing you have. Mike, thank you so much for this information. Many people want to know how to help. And isn't that a lovely instinct? We're becoming Portuguese, aren't we? I think it's human nature anyway, but it is magnified and amplified in this country where there is a lot of mutual support and mutual aid. And I'll echo that. So thanks, Mike, for being here with your expert insight, with your past experience with the fire service and as a paramedic. You mentioned something else I want to pick up on. Is how people think they're going to deal with it themselves, and how they have vastly underestimated sometimes the resources that are required. They filled up buckets, they've soaked their lawn. There comes a point, doesn't there, where you just need to get out of there. You can't save your property sometimes.
We've always been taught that if you're walking towards a fire and you can feel the wind on your face, you're walking towards a fire that's coming towards you. So it kind of, you don't get a very good accurate depiction of how fast that fire is moving towards you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem people have, is they're trying to protect property with like garden hoses and buckets of water.
Right.
That's not going to stop that fire. And those are the people, unfortunately, are putting their lives at risk.
Yeah.
And these fires are moving at such a high, fast speed. It's hard to fathom how quickly these fires move.
Yeah.
For those from the United States, you probably remember that old tale that people used to say is that, fire doubles in size every minute. That was actually developed as a PR gimmick back in like the early 1970s to just give people an idea that fire, builds very quickly. Yeah. But it actually doubles in seconds, not in minutes, or in a minute. And you'll see that these fires can sometimes be moving at 40, 50 miles an hour. You don't see it when it's coming at you because it just looks like a big fire, but you don't realize how fast it's moving until it's too late. Some of the other video I've seen on the news today is you see the fire engines quickly pulling out of like what looks like a side street or a smaller street. And then right behind it, you see everything turn black and all of a sudden turn orange. they got chased out because of the fire moving so quickly. And that's the firefighters, and they have the gear, they have the equipment, but they got pushed out because the fire was too hot and moving too fast. So you do not want to try to put out a fire.
With their garden hose at home stands no chance in such circumstances and should have evacuated long ago, right? It's not worth it, is it?
No. Unfortunately, it's hard because it's and I get this. I mean, this is the livelihood for a lot of people. Our next door neighbors are farmers. If they lost their olive patch or their olive garden and all their olive trees, I mean, that's their way of making a living. So I understand the desire to put that fire out, but it's not going to do any good if everyone that works in that farm is either dead or critically injured because they tried to stop a fire that wasn't going to be stopped with the wind. And wind-driven fires, especially for those from Northern California, is a very common occurrence. Those people from Los Angeles, you hear about that all the time. Wind-driven fires are the most scary type of fires to have, and unfortunately, those are the conditions we're kind of seeing today. Is with the wind and the extremely dry conditions, the fires are moving at a very rapid rate. And unfortunately, people need to understand when the fire burns and you see that smoke coming off the fire, that's incomplete combustion. Those particles are still technically on fire. They're just looking for enough oxygen. So when they're on that really thick smoke right off the top of the fire, they've kind of choked themselves out. But if they get further away from the fire and get more fresh oxygen, they can light up again. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these other fires starting either around one big fire or further down the wind stream.
And these are, and it's again, it's like a poor choice of words, but these are perfect conditions, aren't they? At the moment, there's a dense heat at the moment. The ambient temperatures, it's been very warm over certain parts of Portugal.
It's been very warm and very dry. I read something this morning that they said the humidity at night's has been below 20%, and the humidity during the day has been below 10%. So it's extremely dry. And I mean, they knew that yesterday, today, and tomorrow were going to be prime days. So we're not out of the perfect storm yet. I think it's supposed to end tomorrow night. But going in tomorrow with the hot day and these perfect circumstances, these fires can continue to burn or even start new fires. So we're not out of the woods yet, if you will.
Right. And this is something to bear in mind for the future, isn't it? As you sense these same conditions coming in the future, as they inevitably will. These are climate patterns, aren't they? That this is a time to make sure you've got your grab bag and your go bag ready and you've got a plan, as we've been talking about earlier on. We have had some images sent in, and you can do that on WhatsApp 913-590-303. This is what the sky is looking like in certain parts of Portugal, and if that's not terrifying enough, I've seen worse pictures than that, and I don't want this to be a competition for the worst pictures, but it illustrates what's going on in the country at the moment. That's a terrifying view, isn't it, to be on the road like that, and to see that ahead. Another example would be this. This is what a lot of the roads look like in Portugal, in the central and north, certainly at the moment, with very dark skies. We're a long way from any fires here, and because of the wind, the debris in the sky, we've got a very hazy picture here, miles away from any of the fires. So this is blowing across Portugal, and as Mike was saying, if you've got respiratory issues, think about that. Think about your plans and looking after yourself well under these sorts of conditions. Owen's just sent this. This is Arcos de Valdevez, a big plume of smoke in the distance there. This is typically what a lot of people are seeing, and on a number of fronts as well. We see this in our daily lives in the summer sometimes in Portugal. There'll be a single fire of this kind. The bombeiros will be all over it and it'll be dealt with. The problem we've got today is that as you look out across the horizon, you're going to see a number of these, sadly. Matty sent pictures in earlier on. These are the helicopters which, as we were talking about before, Mike, have been grounded because of the wind. But this is the sort of firefighting equipment that we have here in Portugal, and more is on the way. This is a helicopter with a huge ball of water, and it just seems so feeble in a way, doesn't it? But it's the best that they've got available to them, and perhaps the most amount of water that can be taken to a particular scene, Mike. It's incredible, isn't it? The bravery, the courage and skill that these pilots are showing back and forth, all for hours on end, it seems, but filling up these big bags of water and then dropping them on over and above the fire.
Correct. It's incredible. These guys are extremely skilled, they're extremely trained. The pilots are, they're heroes because they're getting to this, the spots that the firefighters just cannot get to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, these fires are not on flat land. They're up in the mountains. It's very steep terrain. And with the smoke, sometimes it's just physically impossible for those firefighters not to, get through that smoke to get to the scene of the fire. that's where these pilots come in and become really the, the heroes of the day, because they're able to drop, large amounts of water on, fast moving fire to try to keep it in check.
Yes, yeah. So they get into places that where the ground-based firefighters can't go. That's the main purpose, is it, for the air crew to be getting in deep?
Correct. And a lot of times, unfortunately, they lost those 4 GNR firefighters a couple weeks ago up near
That's right. Yeah.
Porto. And what they do is they will fly firefighters, kind of like the hot shots in the United States. They will fly crews of firefighters into the, the seat of the fire. So instead of having to climb up those steep, mountains, they will jump in a helicopter. The helicopter will find a flat piece of ground, more or less, drop them off, and then take off. And then the firefighters will start doing what they need to do to hopefully, put out the fire. So, I mean, Portugal is very, very well versed in wildland fires, unfortunately, just like, the Northeast or Northwest is in the United States. They do this on a regular basis. They have it down, but when, the conditions are such and these fires get out of control, it's going to take probably a few days to put these fires out, unfortunately. This isn't something that's going to be resolved by tomorrow morning.
That's right. I mean, we're seeing real-time updating of the picture here, which is looking no less intense as we're here in this half hour, Mike. Yeah, and these when you have these great blazes, the ground stays hot, doesn't it? And needs to be tended to so that it doesn't erupt again.
And a lot of times that's the problem, is that, you look at the big fires in the trees and those look, those are the ones that everyone looks at, but it's the fire on the ground that can do a lot of damage, because that's all that dry, mulch and stuff. So you could actually be stepping on top of fire and not realize it. So that's why I see a lot of times you'll see those, wildland firefighters digging trenches because they're trying to encircle the fire so they can create a fire break, but they're also looking for unseen fire in the ground or under the ground. It's burning and all that, like, layers and layers of dry, mulch and trees and, branches that have fallen over the years.
Yes.
It becomes a tinderbox, and that's, they're looking for that stuff too, to try to make sure, they don't walk away and, rekindles, which happens a lot.
I see. Yes. So yeah, with the lack of humidity, that stuff has become quite dry and can be holding on to a sort of thermal mass beneath the surface. Okay. Some video footage here from Matty as well. These have been flying back and forth over his land today. So it's pretty obvious what's going on there. They'll be pulling water out of a reservoir, barragem, here in Portugal, big water storage reservoir, perhaps. But they'll take water from wherever they can find it, I'm guessing, which might be rivers, all sorts. Even people's swimming pools I've heard of in the past. It's just, if you need water, right? And this is the worst case scenario. And as I said, I don't want this to be a horror fest of footage. But I want to ask you a question about this, which is really what caught my eye earlier on today and really impressed on me the seriousness of what Portugal's facing today. And it's this scene here. Now, that's I'll just play that one more time so people can see what's going on. That to me is utterly horrific, Mike. And that's that situation you described there, yeah, where the wind has driven the fire towards the road there. There are flaming embers flying everywhere. And that is my worst nightmare, of being in a situation of this kind. I'm sure it is for even your trained firefighter. What do you do if you see this up ahead? Do you turn? What do you do? I mean, that looks horrific. That's a hellish situation, isn't it?
Yeah, you would definitely do not. I mean, I saw that same video. I was going to actually ask you to play it, so I'm glad you did, so we can touch on that. Yeah, that is the quickest way to die in these type of situations. If you see that type of fire crossing the road, you stop, you get out of your car, you turn around, and even if it's going against traffic, you need to get away from that. For those in the United States, they had a horrific fire in Maui last year, Hawaii. Yeah. And most of the people that died in those fires were trying to escape, and they got caught in their cars by a very fast wind-driven fire. You never, ever want to drive through a fire, because God forbid there's a car crash in the lane that you're going or in the direction you're going that blocks the traffic. Now what do? Yeah. The people that get stuck there are the ones that are going to die, because it's extremely hot. It's poor vision. Your oxygen levels in that situation can be depleted, where you can just pass out because of lack of oxygen. It's very, very dangerous. You do not want to drive through those. I see video every You see it, every time there's a big fire in the United States, you see it, and I've seen it from like Spain, Greece, again, from Hawaii last year. You never ever want to drive through. So I mean, there's times that you're driving, the fire is moving so quickly, all of a sudden it's blowing over you. It might be the only way you have to get out of there, but there's enough, I think, smaller roads that you don't have to do that. But you never ever want to drive through a fire like that because it's very, very dangerous, and there's a very high chance that if you get caught in that, you're not going to survive. You cannot outrun those flames.
And presumably people are thinking they know the road, it's not far ahead. If they floor it, they're going to get out of it, and they're willing to take a risk. But you just say the odds are just stacked against you in that situation.
And you could say 8 out of 10 times you might be right, but what happens if all of a sudden the fires run across the road and there's debris, a tree falls across the road, someone gets scared, slams on their brakes, and all of a sudden you have a multi-car pileup.
Yes.
Now what do you do? And now you're in the center of that. It's just not worth the risk.
Doesn't bear thinking about. So your advice is to don't go anywhere near that in the first instance, but get out of your car and go the other way, or if you
can turn your car around, the faster you get away from that, the better.
Yeah.
But if you're truly trapped and there's people behind you that can't move, you have a better chance of running away from the flames. Try to feel which way the wind is blowing, but that's why you don't want to get close to that, because your options are so small. Okay. And unfortunately, again, a lot of people that died in Hawaii last year during those Maui fires. They died, trying to run from their cars, but the fire just was moving. I mean, they were basically, people were running into the ocean to get away from these flames. That's the only thing that saved them, was the break between the roads. The beach is what saved them, because then they had, they could get into the water to cool off. It's horrific, and like you said, it's just, and that's why I said we're creatures of habit. I mean, if I'm going north or south, I'm looking at A13 or A1. That's just what my mind's going to go to. But like right now, I would get onto that road and probably run into a traffic jam. Now what do I do if all of a sudden another fire starts behind me? Now I'm trapped. That's just, you're better off finding another alternative route than going the way that you feel that the best, or might be what you would deem the quickest.
And a good idea to keep checking on the situation, because a later part of the advice might be stay safe. Obviously, you keep an eye on what's going on with Fogosh.pt, have your plan, stick to your plan, but also review, see what's going on, check back with Fogosh.pt to see if the situation has changed and to find out what your options are. So stay aware as well as safe. You don't want to be working on old information, do you? You want to be updated as much as possible. Viv saying the windsocks there were standing straight out. So that gives you an idea of the wind, the intensity of the wind, which was blowing up the fire, of course, there, and why things appear to have got so out of hand there, fire-wise. Yes, the Global Nobles, thankfully, back in Porto, and suggest that's a good point as well. So with what's going on the roads, there's this crazy toilet paper thing with human beings, isn't there? There's an emergency of some kind, and suddenly there's a run on toilet paper, so to speak. People do get the urge to go out and stock up. Supply chains will be a bit disturbed. It might have been better to have these 3 days of food just in case all the time, right? In a country of this kind with these sorts of conditions, rather than try and go out shopping now.
Well, absolutely. And I think, like, coming from the United States, coming from Chicago, we dealt with tornadoes, which are, a sudden blow up, blows through and it's over. People in the Northwest, they're very used to like earthquakes and, wildland fires. People down by the Southeast, Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, they're used to hurricanes. The other thing you also have to always keep in mind too is make sure you have a way to produce light, a flashlight, fresh batteries, because if these fires get up in the mountains and burn these main power lines that go from these substations into your neighborhood, you could potentially lose power too. So it's always a good idea to have something, a couple flashlights laying around. I really wouldn't advise having candles, but something that if you do lose power, you can at least have light at night.
Yes. Okay. Let's just cover that grab bag again and see what other suggestions people have got. So you were saying your most important documents, like your passport, your residency card, driving license, maybe, which you might have nearby and on you at the best of times anyway. Your phone, if possible, and a means of charging it, perhaps a battery pack. But keep these in mind and in a place where you can grab them quickly. You don't want to be losing vital minutes, do you, scrabbling this stuff together? So change of clothing, your toothbrush, the basics, right, Mike, or a duplicate set near the door to go with. Yeah. Okay.
And we always hear, like, and I think if you're given a order to evacuate, we see this a lot in the Gulf states and like the southeastern hurricanes. people are like, no, it's okay. I'm used to this. I'll wait it out. I'll be fine. And unfortunately, these are the people at, the height of the storm that are calling 911 for help. And they're like, look, we can't even get out of our station, much less get to your location to help you. And that's what you have to remember. They're given an evacuation order for a reason. If someone tells you to evacuate, you evacuate. You don't wait around and see what's going to happen, because if you wait around, it might be too late to get out safely.
Yeah.
And that just, again, now they have to come and rescue you and take the efforts of putting the fire away to come and get you and move you to safety. And then they can go back to putting the fires out.
Yeah, for sure. Barrett, good evening to you. Olabono, it seems like there are fires not far from us. That's been the case for the last few days, Barrett. I was over your way in Visio over on Friday and Saturday, and there had been fires in the distance in the Serra da Estrela, and it's culminated in this with the conditions that we've got. So you stay safe there, Barrett. We have had an offer from Sarah in Leria. If anyone does need a safe place to stay, probably best you don't put your details on the screen. If you want me to moderate or facilitate that, my number, 913-590-303 for any messages of that kind, or carl@goodmorningportugal.com on email. I'll make sure that people are connected if they need to be, of course. And thanks again for that offer, Sarah, there as well. And Barrack, you stay safe there. And I'm guessing, as we've indicated so far, you've got your eyes firmly on and are updating fogwash.pt on a regular basis. There is IPMA as well, which I'll come back to, because I think that's a good resource too. If we have got a live feed of Portuguese TV, I can put that on the screen with us. But I've looked at SIC and also I think it was RTP, and the Price is Right is still on RTP1 at the moment. Then maybe they'll have a news bulletin on the hour. But if Lion H, you've got a news feed that you can suggest, send me that link and I'll pop that onto the screen so that we can see that simultaneously as well. But TV seems to be saying that there have been 2 fatalities in Albergaria, Avelia, which is where the real epicenter of the worst fires have been today in the Aveiro district, and 5 are in hospital there. It's always horrible to hear of these sorts of statistics. It's 28 degrees with 14% humidity, says Barrack, where you are, Travanca Way. Very low, and those are the conditions we don't want, right? So, Mike, the low humidity like that, high winds, right, and a high temperature.
And luckily the temperature is decreasing with the sun going down. We're going to get a little bit more humidity overnight, which will hopefully allow the firefighters to get a little bit, a better foothold of what they're doing and putting these fires out. Just going back to the app, if you can, if you look at the app as it is right now, just so what people know is the red circles are going to be active fires. There are green circles, which means the fire's probably been out and they're actually just kind of doing what they call like a vigilance, which means they're just keeping an eye in that area to make sure it doesn't restart. If you see the orange circles, those are all reported fires. And if you click on a lot of those orange circles, they've been reported 3 or 4 hours ago and there's been no updates. The reason it is that, by law, they have to, acknowledge that there's been a 112 call reporting a fire, but that could mean they just do not have resources to get over there to look at that fire. That's why it hasn't turned, red or green, or I think gray means the fire it's in resolution, the fire's been put out.
Well, let's have a look at that. Yeah, I mean, as you say there, I've clicked on that orange there, and they've got 48 personnel, 12 vehicles, and an aircraft there, but no update on what's actually going. So we're waiting for an update. That means, the
correct.
Orange. Right. Okay.
And a lot of times that means they're waiting for confirmation that the fire is active. It was a false alarm, so they'll put it in conclusion to close out that what we call tickets.
Yeah.
Or they just haven't gotten there yet because they've assigned an engine, and now that those engines could be coming from southern, Portugal, and just haven't made their way up here yet. Right. So they may, even though they're coming from Lisbon, they may already have an assignment somewhere in central and northern Portugal, but it's going to take them an hour and 45 minutes to 2.5 hours to get to that scene to confirm. And like I said, they'll try to use aircraft. They'll fly over to see, we see smokes. There's got to be a fire somewhere. We just don't see flames yet, but there is something going on here, but they won't confirm it until they probably have boots on the ground to see how bad it is. But that's why you'll see the different colors, just so people understand. I know, you look at those orange circles, like, well, that got dispatched 3 hours ago. Why hasn't it changed colors? Yeah. They haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, and they've got their hands full, haven't they? Clearly here, and there's a lot to update and to be on top of, as well as the direct firefighting. All this extra surveillance and intelligence that's going on behind the scenes. The Bombeiros are clearly doing an amazing job under very, very difficult and challenging circumstances tonight here in Portugal. You were saying that it becomes cooler, obviously, and more humid, perhaps at night. Are firefighters glad that the night's falling, or are they? Is it a mixed blessing? Because I guess visibility will be reduced as well.
It's a mixed blessing. It will be easier to see where the flames are, through the smoke at night. It's going to be much cooler for them. So, I mean, physically, it's going to be easier for them to fight the fires at night because they're not going to have to fight the stresses of the heat from the sun. Unfortunately, like I said, if you look, probably as it gets darker and darker, some of those air resources will be taken away. Like where you'll see the aircraft will be at zero because they won't be able to fly at night. It's too risky. So they do lose that, but it's more of a contain and do what they can from the perimeters to keep it from spreading. And then at first light tomorrow, the planes and helicopters will be up in the air. And hopefully, if the wind is shifted, they can come in and actually start doing the drops. And it really all depends on the smoke and how heavy that smoke is will determine if the helicopters can fly in there safely or not. The planes have a little bit more range because they can fly a little bit higher, but the helicopters are limited with those, like the bags of water you saw underneath them. So they have to be a little bit closer to the ground to be more of an accurate drop. Otherwise, if they're too high, that water just gets spread over a large area and doesn't really do any good.
Right, and you want every drop counts, doesn't it? In that sort of situation. Okay, so hopefully nightfall will help with this immense effort that's going on. I'm just looking at one of the largest blazes there, 554 operatives there. It's incredible, isn't it? With two, I mean, that's an amazing logistics exercise in its own right. What will that look like on the ground, Mike? How do they control that?
It's called Incident Command System. It was something that was rolled out after 9/11 for at least the United States. The West Coast has been using the Unified Command System for years, and it runs very, very smoothly. They have different. It's a whole class on its own. But basically, they have incident commanders. They're all in charge of X amount of equipment or firefighters, and then they will be dispatched to a specific area or a specific task. It might be fighting fire directly. It might be cutting trees down to take away some of the fuel. It could be plowing or digging trenches around a specific area to create a fire block. And a lot of times those firefighters will only work for an X amount of period of time. So there's like a rotation. So, the firefighters who've been at the front lines will need a break. They'll move back, a kilometer or two, take a couple hour break, eat, drink, rest a little bit. And then the fresh firefighters will move up and they'll continue to rotate that as long as the incident committed. But it's a very well organized, and they have it down bad here in Portugal. So it's very organized. It's, everyone has an assignment. Unfortunately, when the fires are exploding, it's kind of like organized chaos, and sometimes they have to, just like in the military, if something's not working, they retreat, regroup, and then try to reattack to see the best way to extinguish that fire. So it's a very dynamic process.
Yeah, and what a responsibility to be overseeing the lives of 554 souls there in an active fire situation. Quite incredible. Question from Sarah. What are some tips, Mike, for people in their homes that might be surrounded by smoke? Close doors and windows, pack a bag, plan an escape route, and what else? These are things we remember from seeing on TV, right? As kids or whatever, put dampened towels by the door, maybe breathe through a dampened towel. Can you tell us as a professional what we might do?
At this point, just like Sarah pointed out, and I know she's originally from California, so I know this is kind of in her wheelhouse.
Canada. She's got Canadian experience, I think, of wildfires.
Oh, well then perfect. And then it's the same thing. You want to close the windows. If you're going to leave and you have storm shutters, I would close the storm shutters. But for right now, protect in place, keep your windows closed. If you absolutely have to go outside, and I know those testy subjects are, controversial subjects, but you need to wear a mask. You need to have like a surgical mask on. If you still have some old N95 or N100 masks, the particulate
good use for them. Yeah, good use for them.
This is where it's going to come in handy. I would wear those because if like right now, even in our house, we have like little ash all over our desk. We're having our windows open during the day, because when the wind shifted, all of a sudden, like I sent you that picture of our valley, which is just all white. That's all smoke from these fires. In that smoke is ash. So we're breathing that in. So if you have to go outside, like you said, put a surgical mask on if you still have them, or like you said, a scarf or something that you can put over your face so that helps, filter some of the particulate matter that's in the air right now. Yes. But for right now, I would have a plan. I would make sure that I have a bag packed. I have, any important medications, any important documents. And if there is a evacuation order given, you'll be aware of it. And then I would, again, highly suggest that you leave and, follow their orders. And the other important thing I think, moving forward is, do talk to your bomberos. Is there a place like a central meetup point that when they do evacuate, do they recommend that citizens go to a community center? There's like these huge, community centers or the commercial, halls and stuff that they use for these, weekly markets. Is that the place that people want to go, or will they tell you just, something to think about for the, unfortunately, next time this will happen? It's not may or if, it's when it happens again.
That's a really good point, isn't it? And there probably is within the procedures of any locality a public meeting point for an emergency of this kind. You might not know it if you've recently arrived in the area. So it's worth knowing that for the future, of course, as a marshalling and emergency meeting point. And you might be able to be a useful volunteer there yourself in such a circumstance as well. You might have resources you can take there, bedding, towels, and food and so on, should that become necessary. Here in Albergaria, is actually the epicenter, if you like, Crispin, of what's been going on. Is that where you are, Crispin Pezer? The many eucalyptus trees are easy tinder. Lots of burnt land. We know that, don't we? Pine and eucalyptus, of course, in plantation settings tends to be, as Crispin says, they're like tinder. We've been having fires up north for a couple of weeks, but nothing like these. They're putting out pretty quickly. The helicopters scoop water out of the rivers and dump it in the fires. But it's been a real test today. Thank you, T-Duck, for your kind words there. It's really Mike sharing with us his experience and insight as a professional firefighter and paramedic previously in the Chicago emergency services, now living in central Portugal in Miranda de Córdoba, where you sent me this. I think this is your clip from this morning, Mike.
As you know, Carl, nobody can see right across the valley, but this is all the heavy lane smoke that's coming from the fires up near Oviro.
See, even where we are, Mike, we're getting that hazy, sky now. Just, there's nothing for miles in terms of fires, but it's in the air, isn't it? All along this coast now that's blowing down the coast. And also, I think this was from the Portuguese earlier on today as well. Well, that's grim and sadly quite a familiar picture for a lot of people in Portugal at the moment. Back to comments then. Cars can't see you coming and your engine get cut out due to lack of oxygen. This was talking about driving on the motorways, and the bomberos are absolute heroes. That must be, we can't say that enough really tonight, can we? Or at any time of the year for that matter. And you can't turn up on a motorway, you would cause chaos there. And of course, there is that. If your car needs oxygen to work as well, so it may cut out in that situation. So don't find yourself in that position. You have no choice. Miss the main motorway to Lisbon. Please don't drive the other way on a motorway. You'll cause a pile up and kill people, says Pete. Fair comment. That was the A1. They will close the roads, and they have done, of course. You were telling us about that. I think there are still a number of closures in operation. And they'll review again in the morning, right, Mike? When the light comes, that'll be a chance to review what's going on and get a clearer picture of what's happening.
It's going to be, it's a very dynamic, process. They will be evaluating not just, tonight, they'll be evaluating all night long. They'll evaluate tomorrow morning once the light comes back up. And let me just clarify what Pete said, and I think it was just the last comment was absolutely correct. My whole point was you do not want to get yourself on the motorways because, like Pete pointed out, you cannot turn around. Like in the United States, they have like little crossabouts where you can actually, make a U-turn and start heading the opposite direction. Yes. They do not have those here. My whole point was you do not want to get yourself on the motorway and start driving towards where an active fire is, just for that reason. Because once you're committed, you're committed. And like you said, I mean, you just don't want to put yourself in that position because there are no good choices. They're absolutely right. If you turn around, you're going to get hit head on and you're going to kill a bunch of people. But if you continue in that direction, you can potentially get stuck. And, then what do? You leave your car and start running the opposite direction. By that point, it could be too late. So my whole point of bringing it up was just stay off the motorways. Stay at home, and if you do have to go, maybe take the side roads further away from where the fire seat is. Like if it's a Viro, work your way north, because eventually those roads will be open to go away towards, the northern part of Portugal. If you're, by, Coimbra, you're going to want to head south before you get on that motorway and then start working your way towards, Lira or Lisbon. But
Well, it's
you
a
do
good
not
point,
want to
though.
be. Yeah.
It's a very good point, Mike, because it's a continuous barrier, isn't it? In some countries, you might think to yourself, well, I'll drive along here because there'll be an opening where I can hairpin back if necessary.
Correct.
Not always an option, and not
No.
an option on Portuguese motorway. So a very good point there. Don't take that for granted. I remember a few years ago, says Mrs. M here, we visited an empty house that was for sale, and while we were there, the vegetable patch started to smoulder and then lit up. Yeah, and it was really hard to put it out. And this was a tiny little bit of turf in the blazing heat in central Portugal, and you get a sense of how, I mean, the scale that these guys are dealing with, as you can see live on fogos.pt at the moment. That's what the Portuguese firefighters, the emergency services, and the government basically are dealing with here in Portugal tonight as we speak, coming up to 8 o'clock here. I'm with Mike Barton, and we're doing our best to connect people, help people to feel as safe as possible, prepare as much as is possible as well for future occurrences, God forbid. But that's part of life here in Portugal as well, the wildfire situation. But fair to say, this is an extraordinary set of circumstances which has produced a huge number of fires, as you can see on the screen in front of you there. Get copies of your vital documents into the cloud. Another great idea from T-Duck there, where you can access them from anywhere. Very good idea. Yes. Yeah, and that house would burn if we hadn't gone there. I hadn't really thought about that, Mrs. M. Hello, Bonoit. Here in Travanca, 27 degrees with that humidity of 16, with wind at 3 knots, warm, dry. Fortunately, low wind now. So thanks for that, Barak. Stay safe there, my friend. Make sure you keep an eye on Fogos. Everyone should keep a minimum of 3 days in the pantry. Minimum. You'll be glad if you ever need it. And if you don't, you can eat it anyway. Yes, that's a good point, isn't it? Digital copies are super important, that says Sarah as well. It's a great idea there. And glad to be been able to have made that offer in Leiria there. Should anybody need it, Sarah Hedrick has offered a place of refuge should anybody need it. Will do, thanks. Also keeping an eye on Saya, because my horses are there. Yes, of course. Livestock as well. You need to make extra plans, evacuation plans for any animals and livestock that you have. Michaela, good evening to you. Michaela Brown's here tonight. I've just seen the most horrific video of cars driving through an inferno in Estareja. I won't keep playing the footage I've got, but I think we know what you're talking about. It's like hell on earth. What the hell is that road still doing open? Another huge disaster. Now, you can't necessarily blame the emergency services in that situation, Mike. That can happen just in seconds, can't it?
Yeah, and that's the dangerous part. We talk about wind-driven fires. Like I said earlier, the wind was blowing from the north to south, but if that wind changes directions or hits a canyon and all of a sudden it takes kind of like a 45-degree turn, 2 minutes ago looked like the fire was 300 yards away from the roadway is now blowing across the roadway within 30 to 60 seconds. That's how fast these fires move when they explode like that. Yeah. Once it does get that bad and the emergency services catch wind of that, they will shut down those roads for public safety. Now, you will see the firefighters driving through that because that's what they're trained for, but they will shut down the roads for the general public. I can almost guarantee you that video was shot, and I can almost tell you that 5-10 minutes before that video was taken, that roadway was probably clear as a bell.
Yeah.
There was no hazard. The wind shifted or the wind picked up, and all of a sudden the fire overtook the roadway. And that's, again, that's why you never want to be driving towards these types of fires. It's just such a volatile situation that what looks like it's safe and a far ways away can be on top of you in a matter of minutes. So it's just not worth taking that risk.
No, absolutely right. And as you can see, we have got the live feed from SIC Noticias. That's one of the news channels here in Portugal. It's on the hour, isn't it, of course, at the moment, where news is coming in. Thanks for that heads up, Sir Lion H on there. I'm sure it'll be on most Portuguese TV channels, but you get an idea now of what's going on in the country this evening. Night has fallen, and that's what it's looking like. I wondered if I saw a bit of moisture or rain. That would be a godsend tonight, wouldn't it? A bit of rain on those fires around the country would be absolutely wonderful. So far, the horses are okay. If it gets worse, we'll evacuate the horses quickly. So Barrack's obviously got a plan there. Seriously, people, if you think it's fine to travel, because surely they would close the roads if it wasn't safe, please think again. That's right. I mean, you can't expect in these circumstances to have it all figured out for you, right? This is changing second by second in many instances. Good point, well made there, Michaela. And Carl, I'm back in the UK watching the show. When you load up the app on the phone screen, it looks a lot more scary than it does on the TV screen, the web version that we've got there that you're highlighting. Stay safe. We will, Chris. Lots of love to you in the UK there. There are no planes flying at night. We have lots of friends who are both pilots and bomberos, so they'll be starting again at when the dawn, I'm guessing, to if there's anything, if any further blazes or fires that need dousing with aircraft, they'll start that again as soon as the day comes. But look at these shocking pictures here. Mike, from earlier on today. And there you've got the people vainly throwing buckets of water. I guess it's just human nature just to want to do that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's unfortunate where people get injured because they want to try to stop the fire, not understanding how fire behavior really works and the dynamic, nature of the fire. They try to do their best, but unfortunately they're just not trained or have the education to understand the risk involved doing that. And you'll see a lot of the videos where you can see people like they're talking about that small fire at the side of the road. They're trying to fan it or hit it with some branches, and it just gets bigger and bigger. Within a few seconds, they back off because they can't put it out. So just in that few seconds, the fire really tripled or quadrupled in size, and someone's actively trying to put it out, but it's just too much fuel for them to put it out with what they're trying to use.
Yeah, and as you can see here, Portuguese people are going to need help, aren't they? They've lost their homes in some of these circumstances, and I'm sure there are ways we can help. Even in the smallest of ways, when we find out what the full implications are and what sort of help people need, there may be GoFundMe's and all sorts of ways of helping people that will come to light. But I mean, that is just terrifying, isn't it? That picture there. 20 homes, workshops, and offices destroyed there. This is where the worst of the fires were today, I think, in Albergaria Velha, in the Aveiro district here in Portugal. And we've got more messages coming in. Mike, you are relaxing me with the information. I appreciate this very much. And thank you for being here tonight. And that's all part of becoming aware, isn't it, of what's going on. It's very important to get clued into what's going on, so that you can make your plans and calm your worst fears and have a strategy basically for dealing with this.
Well, and as sad as this is happening, I think it's a good thing because I think it reminds people how dangerous these fires can be. As Midwesterners, we think of a fire as something that's on the ground. Here, and for the people who've lived in fire-prone areas, who've dealt with wildland fires their whole life, that these fires can be a wall of fire that goes up to 100 feet, 50 meters or whatever. I mean, it's incredible to see a wall of fire that big coming at you when you're used to just thinking of like campground or fires on the ground. I think this is with the amount of coverage that's taking place and people seeing how fast these fires develop and how quick, how big they are. It's a sobering reminder of that. You need to really be prepared to take this stuff seriously. Because like we talked about earlier, it's not when it or if it happens again, it's when it happens again, and we need to be even more prepared next time around.
Yes, for sure. We can learn from these horrific circumstances. A question here, Lion H and other Portuguese people watching, you might be able to help us with this. I don't know the answer to this. Is there a website to see the condition of the highways, if they are open or closed? I'm sure there is.
If you go to the Fogus website,
yep,
and you click on one of the fires at the bottom of that information tab, I'll see if I can pull it up for you real quick. I just
good on you. Okay. You can share from your end as well if you feel able and willing to do that. There is a lot of information on there, isn't there?
If you click on one of the red dots,
yep,
and scroll all the way to the bottom, which I know it's gonna be hard to see, all that text there is all the roads that are closed.
Oh, excellent. All right, there you go. There's your question answered. I think that's more on the app than it might be.
I'm not sure about the website, but this is a website that you can go to. You got the app, but they also have the website. If you go to the website, fogos.pt, you'll get that same type of map that we were just looking at with all the red circles and stuff.
Yes.
If you click on one of those red circles, it will list at the very bottom where all the what roads are open and closed at this moment.
Okay, very good. Good to know. TDuck also offering help. You can use Google Maps and turn on the traffic layer. It's usually pretty good. Yep. Waze, I think, would probably be quite good as well. You can usually identify closures from stop to traffic. Very good. Google Maps does update road closures with the fires, but watch out for how old the information is to the Global Nobles, who is appreciated as well. Carl, I sent you a screenshot from Google Maps that shows the current closures. Nice one, TDuck. I will put that. Oh, excellent. That's really good to know. And so there's a solution that we found between us there. I'm just popping that onto the screen now. Thank you very much for that, T-Duck. And there's a solution for you there, Global Nobles. There it is right there. Whilst we're waiting for that to load, this is an earlier image as well. These are some of the images that were going into X, Twitter, I'm guessing. The sky over Avera, there were some truly horrific, dramatically horrific shots from that part of the country earlier on. And here is the screenshot. Thanks, T-Duck, for that. Road closures updated live. And that's the picture you were telling us about, wasn't it? So yeah, north of Coimbra. You forget it. Don't just stay at home. Don't be going anywhere near the A1 this evening. Let them get on with what they need to do. Stay home, stay safe, everybody. And we've also I mean, these pictures from the Portuguese TV are just horrific, aren't they? So clearly, strong wind making it more difficult to fight the flames. That's the picture it would appear from the ground. Then, Mike, the weather isn't letting up. There isn't rain. The wind just driving the flames across the countryside by the look of it.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. We've got more people joining us tonight. If you have any offers of help, if you need help, more importantly, make yourself known to us, and we'll do our best to help you in this community of Good Morning Portugal and foreigners, expats, immigrants here in Portugal. We have to go to Coimbra tomorrow for doctor's appointments, suggestions. That's probably going to be best to stay away, right, Mike?
I would, yes. There's a very good chance that depending on how bad the fire gets and how many victims, the hospital could just go into like what they call disaster mode. Yeah. And that is, all, medical staff go towards like the emergency, or I guess what do you call it, A&E in England. They'll take a lot of staff from the floors to try to help the patients coming in. Again, these could be patients who have received burns. They can receive they have ash or like the byproducts of the smoke in their eyes. It could be respiratory issues. And that's one thing I will stress is if you do feel like you're getting shortness of breath, if you're starting to have chest pain because you are getting short of breath, call 112 immediately. Do not hesitate in calling. They have plenty of resources, ambulances and stuff. So do not call thinking, oh, I don't want to burden emergency services. That's one thing I used to hear all the time when I worked in the fire service back in Chicago, is during a big storm, people be having like strokes, heart attacks, and like, well, why didn't you call us 2 hours ago when the symptoms started? Like, well, I knew the storm was blowing through and I didn't want to make it any more hard on you guys.
Bless them.
Please, if you have a problem, call 112 because that's what they will respond and they will get you to safety.
It is the time to burden the emergency services if you've got an emergency, right? That's exactly Absolutely. How it should be used. And a good call there, 112 in this country, of course, not 999 or 911, but 112. Have that imprinted in your mind should you find yourself in an emergency in Portugal. It's 112 for here. Check the route and contact them if you don't think it will be safe to make it. I'm sure they would understand as well, Barrick, but I'm thinking a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I think all eyes and resources will be on the emergency, won't they? Especially the day after, as we have it at the moment. Odds on the roads being closed tomorrow, I think they'll certainly be closed by daybreak, won't they? And then they'll review the pictures then. What do you think, Mike?
Like I said, if they get a good hit on these fires, they could reopen the roads overnight. But my gut instinct is looking at these fires, I don't think those roads will be open, unfortunately, anytime in the next day or two, because if these fires are that out of control. Now, hopefully, once they burn out of all the fuel by the roads, they'll have to find other fuel to burn. Maybe that will pull the fire away from the roads. They can reopen it, but right now it's not looking very promising. But they will continually, because obviously these are main arteries. They don't want these roads to be closed for any longer than they have to be. They will open them as fast and as safe as they could, but it's going to be an ongoing, process to evaluate that. So yeah, if you are traveling, I would definitely try to, keep track on either Google Maps or like that one person suggested, contact the hospital to see if they're even going to have appointments because of safety's sake. And again, if you're going to the hospital for an appointment, understand that the closer you get to Coimbra, the heavier the smoke's going to be. So if you have any type of heart problems, breathing problems, it's probably not in your best interest to even go close to Coimbra, because the closer you get to the seat of fires, the heavier the smoke's going to be and the harder it is to breathe and see. So again, I would probably call.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, on that. We'll probably conclude in just a moment. If you've got any questions, any further questions, no silly questions tonight, just if you're concerned about anything, feel free to ask the question or send it to me directly and I can answer it anonymously. My number's in the chat there. You know the number, 913-590-303. And we'll probably hand over. There is a link to Portuguese TV there, which seems to be covering it fairly well this evening over at Signaticius. Mike's done an amazing job, but we'll just be on for a few more minutes here just to make sure people are okay. They've asked all the questions they want to ask, and we hopefully have left people in a somewhat less stressed or anxious position that they might have been when they first joined us. I dropped off water bottles, electrolytes, and energy cookies at my local fire station. That's the way to do it, Winnie, too. They were very thankful. Supplies run out easily when you have hundreds of fires. It takes time to purchase things. Great job. That's exemplary. Well done, Winnie, too. Let's just hope that the fires don't become cumulonimbus like 2017, sucking fiery winds back down. Yeah, that was a horrible set of circumstances where, as Mike described, a lot of people perished in their vehicles trying to escape the scene there. That's another horrific scene there, isn't it? And look, right down to just bushwhacking, basically trying to calm the flames down there in that part of Portugal that we're seeing on the screen. Yeah, and my number, if you do want to take Sarah up on that offer, if you have need, this is a fast-changing situation. I'll do my best to coordinate here. So 913-590-303. That's the number for Good Morning Portugal anyway, and we can coordinate, facilitate, and connect people should you have a concern. If you're on your own, for example, and you're really worried you don't know how to reach to, give us a buzz on that, and we'll see what we can do for you. Any concluding comments, Mike? You've done an amazing job tonight. Thank you so much for your offer. Thank you for being here tonight. It's been very reassuring. No, what might be your concluding words tonight?
My concluding words are, although it looks horrific right now, these fires will be put out. Again, the Portuguese bomberos are very well versed and very well trained in how to, put these fires out. They have more and more help coming towards them. It might take a day or two to get, the other resources to Portugal if they're coming from outside of Portugal, but they have resources coming in, so the fires will go out. Again, if you're able to drop off, bottled water, if you're able to drop off toiletries, if you're able to drop off, cookies, Powerade, any type of, food, that would be great. But I also highly recommend that once this is all done and over with, to go by your local bombero station, say thank you to the crews, drop off cookies, drop off. I mean, because these guys are, they work their butt off and they should get that recognition. Yeah. And, still, even though once the fire's out, continue to drop bottled water off at the stations because it's going to go into stores. So when there's another big fire, they already have that surplus of water. And the only other thing I would highly recommend is if you have the ability in the near, next couple weeks to the next couple months, if you have the ability to donate blood, because, when people do get burned, they need, the plasma, they need the blood products. And just like everywhere in the world, blood is in extreme shortage. So I know the Miranda de Corvo Firehouse is doing a blood drive at the end of the month. Unfortunately, we're going to be back in Chicago. But, look around and see if they are doing, a lot of times after these big events, they do blood drives. That's another huge thing you can do, which is it's free and it makes a huge difference to the people who need the blood.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Just one more resource that I forgot to mention earlier on. Please make sure you know where fogosh.pt is. Have it on your PC or better still on your app, so you've got it on your mobile device, downloadable from Apple and the Google equivalent, Google Play. And
I'm sorry, real quick, Carl. The nice thing about that Fogosh app is that when you put in your location, it will automatically notify you if there's a fire close by.
Fantastic.
So being in Miranda de Corvo, if there's anything like in our area, like Miranda de Corvo, Lusaw, we will get notified of the dispatch. So if there's something immediately in your area, you're going to receive that dispatch notification, and then you can click on that circle, and it'll tell you if the fire is an active fire, if it's already in conclusion. So that's another great resource because you'll be notified if any dispatch is close to you.
Is that a text notification or a sound notification, Mike?
It's a text notification. I usually don't have my sound up, but it'll pop up as like a notification. It'll say Fogos, and then it'll say like Miranda de Corvo with like the GPS coordinates or where they're roughly at. The fire that I sent you from Friday that was in Samid, the reason I saw that was I got the notification. I walked out my back, patio, and I could see the smoke rising. That's the video I sent you Friday.
Oh, right.
But I was originally notified of that fire. We heard the siren go off from the firehouse, and I got the notification almost immediately. And I was like, oh, that's got to be a big fire. And then sure enough, we looked out our back pan, you could see the smoke billowing up from the mountainside.
Scary stuff. Wow. Okay. When he's asking you where to donate blood, I mean, if you go to your local hospital, they'll probably be able to point you in the right direction, can't they?
Yeah, I know, like if you talk to your Bombero station, they'll usually can point you in the right directions. A lot of times they will hold blood drives, but hospitals, I'm pretty sure that, and I've seen ambulances that have the Red Cross on it. So I know the Red Cross is here. The Red Cross in the United States is, runs a lot of blood drives. But yeah, if you call like your local hospital or local Bomberos, as long as it's not one of the stations closer to where the fires are, they'll be able to tell you where you can donate blood and, get you, put in touch with the right people.
Right. Okay. Excellent. And if you want to really get, oh yeah, Huini's been getting that. If you really want to get ahead of this, the screen that I'm showing you now is IPMA, which is Portugal's meteorological resource center. It's an incredible resource. And this is their particular page. I mean, there's stuff for agriculture, the seas, the climate, earthquakes as well. It's there for every kind of emergency and circumstance that a country might go through. But you'll see here, that's the current situation. The purplish color is the parts of Portugal that are on maximum alert, and even the orange parts are elevated alert. So pretty much all of Portugal is ranging from elevated to maximum alert, and you can see a lot of purple on the screen there in the north, central and north of Portugal.
Yeah.
And that's where where it's been at its worst, obviously, today. And that will tell you, if you go to that a link that I've put on the screen, that tells you the picture and what they're expecting, what they're anticipating. So there is that as well.
And just remember, tomorrow is supposed to be as dangerous as it was today for fire, potential.
Is that right, Mike?
We're not out of the woods. It's unfortunately the conditions are going to be just as bad tomorrow with the, extreme high risk of fires. So, and another thing is, if you are looking out or you happen to be driving around and you see like smoke billowing up from the, a hillside, call 112 and report it right away. Because the sooner they can get on top of those fires, they are able to put them out very quickly. But you have to report, even if you see something, say something type that mentality.
Yep,
so don't be afraid to call 112 just to make sure that isn't a fire that's going to get out of control. To see what happens when they get out.
Excellent advice there, Mike. Thanks for being here. And we've got another image from Owen. This is tonight's sunset, which of course is coloured by smoke in the sky, and it's like strangely beautiful. But I guess that's a poignant note to end on. And however you wish to send good intentions, prayers, good thoughts, positive vibes, however you see it, to the Bomberos and anybody who's working at the front line of this. This might be a moment to do that as we look at the sunset this evening here in Portugal, and look forward to, I hope, a better day tomorrow here in Portugal. Thank you for being here tonight. 913-590-303, the number if you need continued help. And thanks again to Mike, and thanks everyone for checking in and being here tonight. Thank you, Mike.
No problem. Thank you for having me.